please feel free to ask any questions, challenge us. Yes, we have one. Okay, so Nick Olivier, if you come up. Thank you.
Hi. Is this
Turn.
right? Yeah, I've just got a question. I was talking to a steelwork fabricator recently about recycling steel, and he was complaining about the specification of coatings for steel and the difficulty that those present to recycling. I don't know if that is true or not, and are we being too conservative with our coatings and making them too difficult to remove?
Thank you. Well, you're talking about recycling rather than reusing, yes? Well, you're right. There are some, if we're recycling, the issue's not too bad. We go back into the furnace, in which case Nick might be able to tell me, but the coatings are burnt off and caught in the scrubbing systems they use. So in general, it's not an issue. There are some older coatings that do have some arsenic and some other nasties in. But generally that's not a problem in terms of recycling. In terms of reuse, we do have to test that if we're trying to reuse a building that's 20, 30, 40 years old. So we would have to test the coating and, if necessary, remove it, which we would probably do anyway. So we would generally shot blast it and recover that and separate, and that recovered coating would need to go to a specialized facility or landfill. Good question. Anyway, another one here, thank you.
Hi, my name is Hans de Grauwe. I'm an architect. It's a question for Olivier. Thanks for the inspiring presentation. We heard from all speakers that concrete is pretty linear and is ready for downcycling. And I think you are too nice to the concrete industry because they are responsible for 9% of greenhouse gases in the world. So why not going for a completely dry composite floor, in a sense that we wouldn't use any concrete at all except for the foundations? I know that the answer is fire safety and so on, but there are pretty good materials in the world that, and systems in the world that can solve fire safety.
Yeah, we have a lot of research programs that are going into this direction. So it's not a problem of fire. The concrete we used there was not used at all for fire issue. We have a lot of other way to resolve the fire problem into steel and composite building. What we wanted here in the study we made is to compare something which is achievable now by any company, any engineer, any construction company, any designer. It's clear that we need to optimize as much as we can our material. I work for steel industry, but I also teach at university. And what I say to the architect and to designer is that you need to respect the nature of material. So you need to use the best material at the right place. Concrete has a place in building industry. Of course, it has drawback, it has cost, but for me, it would be an utopia to think we can, from now, eliminate concrete from building industry. We are not ready. I know concrete industry is also working a lot on the way to recycle their material, to try to do something with this crushed concrete. And I put also personally hope in this, that we will be able to reuse also this material. We need inertia. It means when we go for 100% dry construction without inertia, we will have other issue to resolve. So today, for me, the answer is in the combination of the different material. And yes, in the future, it will be possible to build building without concrete, with other material, not only with steel. I don't believe in this. We will need to combine steel with other material. That's clear to me.
Okay, I was just going to show you this scenario again, that in terms of the work we're doing, we're actually found that in this scenario, you actually make a bigger saving from the concrete than you do from the steel, because we're already today recycling the steel. So the marginal benefit of reusing that is smaller than the benefit of reusing the concrete. So I don't know if there's any concrete people in the audience, and I'm sure they have their own views, but actually what we're doing here by reclaiming the floor elements as well as the structure, we're actually helping them as well. And there's a bigger saving to be made in recovering the slabs than there is the differential of reusing as opposed to recycling the steel. Okay, we're nearly at time. One more question would be great. Thank you.
I don't know how relevant this is exactly to circular economy, but I just wondered what you thought about certification systems for steel, like things like CARES, and if that did have a potential for assisting with like tracking materials and reusing them.
Sorry, could you just...
I just wondered if, I don't know if this is super relevant to the circular economy aspect, but I wondered what you thought of certification systems like CARES and things like that for steel, because sometimes people that don't know a lot about it, they can like just, certification systems can seem like a good way to choose things.
When you say CARES, you mean some sort of responsible sourcing thing, as opposed to certifying the structural properties of older steel. Okay, well, these companies will both have BES 6001 responsible sourcing. So instead of CARES, they have that certification already. So in terms of sustainability and responsibility, both Tata Steel and ArcelorMittal have that. I think British Steel does as well. I'm not sure about that, but do you want to add, you guys, either?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the companies that British Steel, Tata Steel, ArcelorMittal are all BES 6001 certified. So that's our equivalent to CARES. We also produce environmental product declarations. So if you want to know specifically where your steel come from or how it was produced, and some of the environmental aspects of those, EPDs are another source of information. So certainly when you're procuring steel, those are the sorts of things that we would recommend you look for to have some assurance about issues to do with responsible sourcing and environmental matters.
Is that right? One last quick question.
Thanks, Mike. You've kind of hinted at the presentation, I think, it kind of going towards modularization almost with the steel and the slab. And presumably the first point in getting that right would be with the loading. Is there anything is there any thoughts of standardizing loading for buildings so that, 100 years from now, it is just about recycling the components as opposed to having to fully redesign?
Yeah, it's clear that we will need, if we want to go for reuse, we will need a bit to change the way we think about optimization. Today, engineers, when they optimize something, they want to go everything at 100%. That's clear. When you do like this, you will save today the biggest amount of material, whatever the material. But you will sacrifice on the flexibility of your building. You will sacrifice on the potential reusability. We know that since 50 years, loading we use in building has changed. The load have increased. It means that if you want to think in a more sustainable way, perhaps we need to think to over-design a bit our building, to provide them more flexibility, to be able to change an office building into a residential building and vice versa. Today it's quite complex. Everyone optimizes everything. We think about today. But we need to switch your brain and and to look more in the future. Of course, it will have a small cost today. Small cost for the environment, we will use a bit more material. Small financial cost, it will cost a bit more. But what we can save if our building can last 20 years more, or if the component can be reused, is dramatically bigger than the really small savings we will do today.
Thank you. There's quite a lot of work going on this, led by, as you all know, Cambridge, who have looked at both over-design of steel and they're now looking at concrete structures, and also the issues of over-specifying loads. But as Olivier said, there is that trade-off between getting your building as lean as possible today and trying to future-proof it in terms of flexibility. So yes, we will give some guidance as a result of these two projects, and I think there'll be work coming out of the Mecon project from Cambridge. But yeah, it's another issue we need to work on. Okay, I think time's up. Is that right? Thank you all very much for sitting through. I hope you've enjoyed it. If we can just thank 3 speakers, including me, in the usual way. Thank you very much for listening.